Thank you so much for everybody who has joined so far and whoever's going to watch this recording later on YouTube. We have Karina with us. Karina, why don't you give us a bit of well, to give you a bit of context, Karina and I, we used to be teammates. I'm sure most of you have heard an agency called Kurogo. So we used to work there together as personal brand managers, then as account managers, and then we both, we left and we found our own career paths, you could say. We've moved on from Kurogo now. And yeah, so I don't know, that sounded way terrible than it should have. But Karina, give us a bit of context about you. Who are you? What are you doing right now? Just tell us.
Yeah, of course. So hi everybody, I'm Karina. I'm a brand manager at an agency called Leather Brands. Oh, we have a
No, go on. I'll take care of that. You go on.
Okay, no worries. A company called Leather Brands. You may have heard of like the founder of the agency I now work for. His name's Chris Donnelly. Has over 1 million followers on the platform of LinkedIn. So around this time last year, he reached out to me and asked if I kind of wanted to join the team following the experience I had with Harlib at Kurogo. But prior to working in the personal brand space, like everybody else that joins marketing, I actually had a very different background and career. So I actually have a German degree. So my passion was actually like languages and culture. I went into like the corporate world of like consulting and finance to use my German. It drained my soul being in that environment. So I wanted to find something new. Started doing some translation work, but kind of just got interested by what people were doing on LinkedIn. Started to see people my age like creating content, and at first I found it really strange. I was like, why are people in their 20s like posting this stuff on LinkedIn? Became curious, started copying them and kind of like figuring out what was going on. And a few years later, I'm now a brand manager working with CEOs and founders that have brands from 6, 7 to even 8 figures. Some are like on television, on TV shows in like their respective countries. Some of them have kind of got multiple businesses. They have teams across the world. And essentially my job to kind of make them look good on LinkedIn, let people know about their business and what they stand for.
Awesome. Love that. And you mentioned something in the beginning that you have a different degree and now you're doing something else. This is actually one of the most common questions that I get in our community, right? And that question is how, if you're in one career and you want to change careers, how do you actually leverage LinkedIn? So the first question in my mind is, Karina, can you actually leverage LinkedIn if you come from a different background, you want to change careers? Like that's the question I would love for you to answer.
Yeah, you 100% can. I think a lot of people like fear that like if they pick the wrong career when they're like 21, that's going to have to be like their career for life, which just isn't true. And I think the only way that will stay true is if like you believe, if you just convince yourself of that. So for example, what I started doing, so I was actually a translation project manager at the time. So I didn't actually have an interest in being in marketing at this point in time. It's probably worth pointing that out. I just started creating content on LinkedIn as like a hobby. So I had like a passion for languages, travel, culture. So I just decided to start creating content about kind of my interests. I didn't really know if anybody would see it, if it would be interesting to people. But what I found was over time, like people started noticing the fact that I was posting about like my hobbies, my interests, but more importantly, they were less bothered, quote unquote, by the fact that I was talking about languages, but more they were able to like recognize the fact that I was like able to create content like consistently on a platform and like change it with different formats. That I was actually personally approached by a person from the agency that Harlib and I used to work at and said, would you be interested in doing personal branding for a living? So my first response was, well, what does that even mean? Like, is that a job? Like, this is my hobby. I'm doing this bit of fun. I was like, I don't have a marketing degree. I don't know anything that you probably want me to know. I literally just been doing this in my spare time. So I kind of convinced myself that I wasn't going to be able to like do a job like that based on my experience. So in my instance, it actually took somebody else being able to point out to me, actually, you do have a skill at like doing this. Like you're growing an audience, you're posting consistently, you're writing like cohesively. So it actually going to take somebody else to tell me that it's like a career path I could go down. But I think you don't need somebody, you don't have to have like that kind of, situation that I had to kind of realize that if you're sat in your job and you're not passionate about it, like you kind of know in yourself that there's perhaps something else out there for you. And I'd say most employers nowadays are bothered less, do you have a degree in this subject, and more, can you show you're proactive enough or you're like demonstrating some other way online that people can look at and read to kind of see okay, he's got an engineering degree, but I can see from like the content that he's creating that he's wanting to pivot away from this, and like people pay attention to that.
Yeah. And a lot of the times people, when they think of LinkedIn, they only think of content, right?
100%.
So I want to ask you about what about networking? Because yes, content plays a role, but how big of a role does networking also play when it comes to landing roles or landing yourself other opportunities?
Yeah, so networking plays a massive role, and it also kind of played a role as to like how I was able, as much as somebody reached out to me, I actually, once I started realizing what people were doing on personal branding and what it was, I started reaching out to creators on LinkedIn that kind of branded themselves as like being experts in the field. I started messaging them. I asked them how they ended up kind of falling into this career path, if they had any like tips and tricks for like my profile, how I could like strengthen what I was doing, if I was like doing it right. I was asking people like who else I should be connecting with, who should I be following that are kind of also in the industry. And what I started doing, I started like DMs with them. I wasn't like pitching them or like, I think it's going to sound awful, but there's like a lot of people on LinkedIn will like message you and ask you for like your help. Now, as much as obviously in an ideal world, everybody will get back to you and be like, I'd love to help you. Let's book in half an hour. Like that's sadly like just not the reality like of how the platform works. Like anymore, people are like, you know, time is precious to people are busy. So I would instead kind of go in with the approach of just like, hey, like I really like your content. I'd like to just follow along your journey, like find out, you know, you need to be the one to show an interest in them rather than immediately ask them for their help, because I think that's what kind of like puts a wall between you and them. It's your first interaction, and the first thing you've said is, can you help me? Which it's understandable why you do that, but from that person's perspective, it's like, I've just got to kind of give you my time and I don't know you. So I'd instead be proactive, find other creators in a niche. They don't even have to be creators, just if you don't kind of want to go down the creative route, just individuals that are kind of in your sector, drop them a message, saw your career history, I'm kind of looking to do something the same, wanted to connect on LinkedIn so I can kind of just follow along with what you're doing.
Yeah. And another concern when it comes to LinkedIn, especially these days, I mean, as opposed to when we initially started or documenting our journeys on LinkedIn, is reach, right? I get this question a lot from the community. They're like, we can't get reach, impressions are low, what do? We don't feel like LinkedIn is working. There's an element of, yes, reach is down, but you also have networking, right? And in my opinion, you're not going to get an opportunity like 90% of the times. You'll get an opportunity because you had a conversation with somebody. You reached out to somebody or they reached out to you, right? That is where actually what happens. So my question to you, I suppose, is if reach is down, then what can you do as a creator, whether it's networking or whether it's something else or commenting? How can you keep momentum going without losing your sanity?
Yeah, I think the first thing is when you're on your own account, you don't have eyeballs on everybody else's. So like one of the benefits like I have in my job is that like I'm actually logged into 7 different people's LinkedIn accounts, and I can tell you categorically that on every single person's account, reach is down. So So it's kind of just, I think that's the first thing to know, is it's not just you. A lot of people aren't going to like post and tell people, but like reach is down across the board. There's been a shift in the algorithm. Kind of just stopping creating content altogether is not the solution. The more you kind of build up a community of people, like the right people will still see your content, even if it's not going absolutely viral. The key is to just kind of like package what you're posting with, ensuring, you know, you're commenting on other people's creators, you're kind of keeping your account active. You're replying to DMs, because if you like reply to someone's DM, there's a higher chance of like your post kind of coming on their feed like the next day. So kind of just make sure you're like replying to, obviously you don't have to reply to everybody if you don't want to, but it's good practice, like replying to DMs, because it kind of shows the algorithm, the platform that you're, you know, online. But I wouldn't get bogged down on impressions, because the way to think of it is like 500,000 people, like in the best case scenario, could see like a post that you've done. The chances are 500,000 people have seen a post you've done. It's got absolutely nothing to do with like your business. It's like England have won the World Cup and it hasn't happened since 1966. Like this is mental sort of thing. Like everyone's like, you know, commenting, getting involved. You're not really getting any value from that. You're just kind of, people are like, oh, it's you. So I, for example, I did one the other day. It was like this email about, you know, about a job interview that's kind of gone bad, and like this person gave really bad feedback. Nothing to do with like me or my job, but I was like, oh, this is interesting, and I knew it would like get people talking. So most of my posts sit below 10,000 impressions. This one got 400,000 impressions.
Wow.
It went absolutely mental. I was just sat there thinking, what on earth is going on? But it's because it was such like a, it was, the image irritated people. So it kind of came, there's somebody saying, you came to the interview, you asked questions about the job, the role, the culture, like you shouldn't do that. So obviously that's a topic that everyone on LinkedIn is going to be like what? This can't be real. This can't be right. So it's like clickbait. So clickbait's great for impressions and kind of raising your profile, but you'll often find, and Harley will like back me up on this when we used to have clients, sometimes a post will get like 10 likes. Like 10 likes, but like those 10 people that have actually liked are actually the most relevant people that could actually be liking your content. And I think that's what's to keep in mind. But there's like different stages that people miss out. So someone liking your content, that's not like a hot lead in itself. Like they've just liked your post. And I think some people have this mindset of, if Ben likes my post, Ben's going to message me tomorrow and want to buy my product. Like that's just not how it works. You've kind of got that indication that Ben's interested. Great. He likes the content. Can I start now a conversation with Ben in the DMs? Like, I'm not going to sell anything to Ben at this point. I'm just going to say like, hey, just like my content, appreciate it. Just shout if you ever need anything. And then you kind of have to funnel that attention to a conversation, because like the post in itself is not a conversation. It's their content.
And it's sometimes people ask me like, we got 100 impressions and we don't think it's worth anything. Well, as you said, even if 5 out of those 100 people, they're relevant to what you do or what you want to achieve on the platform, I think it's more than enough. Because I think if you're on LinkedIn, you absolutely need to have an end goal in mind, right? Because we have a few members in the community who are trying to land jobs through LinkedIn. Some people have businesses, they want to find clients, or some people, they don't have businesses yet, but they want to launch a copywriting business or another type of business. So it all depends on your end goal, and you need to understand that each piece of content serves a purpose. Sometimes you just want to talk to people and say something like, hey, this is what happened. For example, the email story you just told me, right? Yeah. It's fine. And sometimes you post something because you feel like this one person in my network may read this and may feel like, you know what, this is actually good stuff. So that is, that is great advice. And let's say, Karina, if you were to start from scratch, right? From day one with all the knowledge that you have now, and you wanted to land a job, or at least start conversations with people who could get you a job, what would your strategy be like?
So it's probably worth noting that when I did start out, I didn't have a strategy. So any of you guys will have any advantage over me if you get started at this point. But like Khalib said, the first thing to kind of do is just kind of get really clear on like why you want to create content on LinkedIn. So I'm currently creating content for the employee, because I don't think that there's enough messaging out there for employees like on the platform, that I kind of want to be seen as like the voice of the employee who can also do her own thing and kind of be successful in her career. So the first thing I would do is, if you're wanting to get a job, or there's a certain field you want to get into, you need to start thinking to yourself, okay, who is the person that's going to help me get this job? So say, for example, you want to be a copywriter. That's like your dream job. Even if you've been in any other industry before, you want to become a copywriter. First thing I would be doing is kind of going on the platform and finding who are the creators that create about copywriting. I start figuring out the kind of topics that they're talking about. How often are they posting content about that? What are people kind of saying in the comments about this kind of content? Like, do people like it? And I think, okay, this is my starting point. Now, when you're kind of looking at what other contents work for these people, I'm not saying you now go and write the exact same thing like on your account. But everyone has like a slightly different opinion or nuance or example that they can give that's kind of similar to like topics that are covered, to kind of give their own spin on something. So the first thing I would do is find creators in your network. Well, that could be in your network, connect with them, and start studying like what they're posting. Second thing I'd do is create a posting schedule. So some people like to create content 7 days a week. Our clients create 7 days a week. I personally think it's a lot. I would kind of recommend 3 to 5. And as a starting point, maybe even just twice a week, just to kind of get comfortable with posting. Start taking note of like who's in the comments. Are they other content writers, copywriters? You might think, well, why would I connect with them? Like, they're not going to employ me. If they're a content writer, like for example me, like they have a job, they work at a company. So if you kind of become friendly with them, you kind of get to know them. If like a job becomes available, like at their company, like I can't tell you how many people apply for copywriting jobs. Like I think we had the last one about 500 people apply. Like that's a lot of people. And the first thing an employer will say is like, do you guys know any of these people? Because it will help narrow down the list quite quickly. If I can turn around and say, actually, yeah, I've been friends with Harlib for a year. I read his content. I know he's really passionate about this. I trust him. That's kind of going to give you like that shoe in that sense. So I think don't underestimate being top of mind when like a new job becomes available with one of your contacts. That's point number one. And then point number two is also like going after like if you like go online and kind of find the agency, so you can kind of perhaps figure out who's in HR or head of operations. You can start connecting with them on LinkedIn. If you know they're hiring, you can drop them a message, like a personalized message that you've applied, you're really excited for the job. But also like off LinkedIn, you can also kind of, like email those individuals. The only thing worth mentioning as well is though, and this is like, again, a bit like what I mentioned before, when you're asking for help, when like a job goes live at an agency, people get a lot of questions. I get a lot of DMs from people. Like everybody wants to tell me why they want the role. And like, I know for well, like we can't give like all of those individuals a role. And I feel awful for that. I want to give everyone a job. So I think if you are in the position that you've applied for a job, it's worth reaching out to an individual that works there as well to kind of let them know you've applied, you're excited, do you like the role? But also try and write a message that's not so generic that like they've received it from like the last 10 people. Like everybody wants a job, everyone deserves a job, everyone thinks they can stand out, but like if you want to send like a portfolio, maybe send like a video of yourself to like an individual. Like if you want to work in the personal branding space, you could kind of message the founder and be like, I've done a quick loom on things you can kind of improve on your profile. Just little things like this to like stand out. Or when someone sent me a voice note once and I found it really jarring because like I didn't know who this person was, but actually it really made me smile because I was like, no one's ever sent me a voice note on LinkedIn before.
And that person stood out.
Yeah, and it stood out. I'm like, oh, it's Johnny. Now I'm like, oh, it's Johnny because I remember him because he like sent me the voice note.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the times the whoever like in our community and in general as well, they ask, should we directly post about or make it very clear on our profile that we're looking for a role, or should we create content that is relevant to what we want to do in the future or even right now, profile optimized based on that, not directly asking for a job, but in the background when we do start conversations, we eventually want it to lead to that kind of a conversation, right? Like, do you have any vacancies or anything? Do you have any tips on how to approach these DMs? How do I, if I'm looking for a job, how do I message someone on LinkedIn, assuming that I've connected with them and I've interacted with their content a couple of times?
And they're hiring.
They are hiring, or you just want to inquire, like maybe they're going to get a liking to me and they'll be like, you know what, we have a vacancy.
Yeah, if I was you, so I'd pick like a post that like really stood out to you from that week, because a lot of people say like, oh, I love your content, even though people don't always kind of mean it or have actually read it. And even though you're like engaging people in the comments, sometimes if someone gets a lot of comments on their feed, it can kind of become a bit of a mismatch of who's who. So I'd say like, love the post you did on Tuesday about X. I felt that a lot myself. Wanted to drop you a note that I noticed your company are hiring. I feel I'd be a great candidate for the role. I'll send us some further information. Would love to be considered. What I wouldn't do is like come across as too like desperate for the role. I would instead like kind of just make it clear why you'd be a great fit, as opposed to why like you need a job, if that makes sense. So sometimes people message me like, I've just lost my job, I need a job, and I'm like, you're almost like putting, it sounds awful, but you're putting your problem on somebody else. Then what you kind of need to do is kind of make it clearer why you should get the job. And this might just be my personal opinion, so take of this what you will. But from like a credibility perspective, I'm not a fan of the open to work on your photo. Now,
we had this discussion actually a couple of days ago. I
know it sounds counterintuitive because obviously you want a job, but I think if you're like looking to like build up your brand and like like who you are, I would kind of focus. There is a setting you can have on LinkedIn where you're open to work to recruiters without it needing to go on your banner. So recruiters will still find you. Like I still have recruiters, message me, even though I don't have it on the banner or anything. But I think from like a credibility perspective, like if you're starting to like create content about like your niche and your industry, the first thing people are going to do is like go on your profile. And even if you haven't like got a job at this point in time, you could always just put something like freelancer or something in your, you know, your in your like work history, like about what you are involved in, like, you know, working on projects, like just something that kind of makes me think, okay, you're active in the industry that you want to be in. And even, for example, if like Harlib was like an engineer before he kind of went down this path, if he kind of just put something in there, maybe it's like an internship or like a program that he's like signed up to, perhaps learn a bit about marketing, just something that kind of makes it clear to me that like you're serious about this, and you know, it's kind of worth giving you a shot. Because I think sometimes the open to work, I don't know, it's like a psychological thing. I see it, and
It is a psychological thing. Yeah.
If I think you're, even if you kind of put freelancer, it still makes me think you're in a stronger position. Like you're more in demand. Like I want you. Like you're busy or something, but I want you.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. No, that one, we had a similar discussion, and I don't know, I feel like in today's world, whether you're trying to find a job, whether you're trying to land clients on LinkedIn, people are looking for excuses to disqualify you as opposed to getting you on a team. I feel like it's a psychological thing, right? If I see a banner that says open to work and I'm hiring, I'll probably not approach that person, because I want to see a strong brand and people who are already doing things, and then I'm like, oh, maybe they can help me out. So I really appreciate that, because that makes a lot of sense. Now, the next thing I want to ask you is, you know, speaking of freelancing, in your opinion, what do you think is LinkedIn better for? It's not a this or that situation. I think you can do both, but what do you think is LinkedIn better for? Finding a job and building a career, or pursuing a freelancing career, right? Finding clients. What do you think is the best case scenario here, and what positives LinkedIn mostly has? And I don't know, just want your opinion on this. Which one do you think works best on LinkedIn?
I don't think it's either is better. I think from like a job perspective, you can find like remote work on LinkedIn. So like, for example, like my job is based in London, but I don't live in London. And like at Rogo, like Harlib lives obviously in Pakistan. We were able to work together. So I think one advantage is like, if you're kind of on like, we have like, I don't know if you have like Indeed in Pakistan, but we have like Indeed here, which is like a job board. I couldn't necessarily find a job there in like Germany or, you know, France. So I think the good thing about LinkedIn is that you can kind of set it to remote work. There's a whole pool of opportunities that like you can start considering yourself for, that you perhaps wouldn't have been able to before. And obviously, although like the hiring managers and that are probably not creators on the platform, they're probably not doing any content, they will spend a lot of time on LinkedIn scanning people's profiles, doing like background checks on people. So it's always really good, even if you're not looking to be like a content creator or kind of using LinkedIn in that way, just having a solid profile. So like if you haven't got a picture, if you haven't got a banner, if your about section, you know, perhaps like 4 years old, like as an employee who's perhaps doing quick checks on people's profiles, I'm going to disqualify you just because I think you haven't bothered to make your LinkedIn profile. I'm not saying you need the most created banner in the world, or like, you know, no one's expecting you to be a designer, but if you haven't like really tried with your profile in any way, like they're not going to go out of their way to find out more about you, I guess is what you could say. And people do post like that they're hiring and that they're open to work. So I think on that side of things, like Jake, my old colleague, he did a post that they were doing. There was a personal branding job going. I messaged him like, what does that even mean? Like, what is the job? I don't understand. Like, I wasn't even applying. I was just like genuinely like, what is this job? And then he was like, let's have a call. We got off the call. I applied and I got the job. And that was just purely through me seeing him do a post about his job. I was curious. It's a bit, I'm not going to lie, it's a lot more competitive than it was 3 years ago to take that approach.
Oh yes, 100%.
I wish it still went like that, but it's very difficult now. Like I probably wouldn't have got the job I had 3 years ago if I went from scratch today. But then as like a freelancer, obviously there's a whole pool of people out there. So the more people you connect with on the platform, you know, if you're, say for example, I'm connected to a lot of like freelance translators because I kind of came from a language background. It's a very competitive industry to be a freelancer, like regardless of industry, to be honest. So the more you're kind of building up your presence online, you're sharing, you know, recently translated a project for a client on this law contract, or, you know, met a client for lunch, just kind of showcasing that like you're in demand, you're busy. Like what you're not going to be doing as like a freelancer is like, hi everyone, like I need work, please can you send it my way? Is about
doesn't work.
It doesn't work. And this is kind of where LinkedIn's a bit of a dark place sometimes, because obviously nobody's ever going to put well, you obviously can, but people don't put posts like I'm struggling, I've had a quiet month. You know, you always kind of have to be shown to like put in your best foot forward to some extent. You can be vulnerable, but if you're kind of saying worked on 3 projects last month, some spots are like opening up for a new client, it's much better to kind of create that demand of like, the spots opening up, I've got a bit of time for you. Like I can promise you, when people do these posts, like I've got 2 spots opening up, they've got 10, like there's 10 people.
Really?
But if you kind of make yourself look too available, it's like, oh, well, the people not working with you. So it's like, the more presence that you have online about your brand, about kind of what your work is, you're always going to attract more opportunities through doing that than just having a profile that says I'm a freelance translator and then nothing else on it.
Yeah. And it's a long-term strategy, isn't it? Like you can't
100%.
really expect results in 1 month.
Yeah. And like the thing is, like, to genuinely just know is that like everything you read about every success story that people put out there, like take everything you read with a pinch of salt. Like sometimes I'll see somebody, you know, last month I did this, and this. I'll DM them and be like, oh wow, like your life sounds insane. Like I'm thinking of actually just doing that myself. And then they're like, oh, actually, like things are really bad at the moment. And I'm like,
Really?
oh, okay. So I think that's obviously not every instance, but people, it is, you know, a highlight reel. People are always going to look their best version of themselves like on there. So if you're a freelancer starting out and think, God, that person's so busy and I have no work, like I would just reach out to them and just ask what their approach was. Like there's plenty of freelance work to like go around. And like, you know, how did you go about getting clients in the early days? And then again, you're not saying to them, you tell me what to do. You're kind of showing an interest in their life, what they did. And people are always going to be more willing to talk about themselves because that's just kind of how life
nature
is.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much for everything. We have about 15 minutes more, so let's take a few questions from our audience. So guys, if you have any sort of questions, please shoot them in here. Do not think if a question is worth asking or not, just shoot it. I'm sure Karina will be more than happy to answer. I remember when you mentioned the Jake story, right? Of how you were like, I don't understand the role. When I was actually interning at Crow, I was an intern and then I left them. And then a few days later, I saw Jake with a post saying like, hey, we're hiring for a personal brand manager. I was like, okay, can you tell me a bit more? I texted similar thing. I was like, can you please make me understand what the role is about, what needs to be done, what's the salary, etc., etc. And then he was like, let's get on a call. We got on a call, we had a conversation, and then I landed the role. But as you said, the landscape is much more competitive now, and I don't think that it's that easy anymore. But yeah, so we have our first question from Mohammed Noman, and he says, how can freelancers or job seekers use content to attract clients or recruiters?
So I'll start with the freelancers one, to attract clients. So great examples of like things you can kind of like talk about are like recent projects that you've worked on, like any industry struggles or like pain points that like, you know, you've been helping someone solve. So say AI is like massive in the translation industry now. Like one client thought that AI could translate their whole document for them. They employed me to proofread. Turns out like the AI wasn't right. Lots of other people are kind of taking this approach. Here's why you should still kind of employ a freelancer or, you know, a human to kind of do this job. So like call out any like pain points that you're like seeing happen, like challenges that clients are doing and how you're stepping in to help them. But also kind of just getting people like familiar with like, people don't want to just work with you for your work. They kind of want to work with you for like who you are, like as a person. So you can kind of do some content around, you know, like personal stories. You know, last week went to 2 networking events, met my family for this, like kind of throw in a few like work related things and a few things about your life so people kind of get a better feel for you, and to just start being like consistent and posting about who you are, what you do. The worst thing you can do is like which is like the logical thing you would think to do, is to be like, here are my services, here are my prices, get in touch, because it's like just no one's interested in that. It's like tap into the pain points, let people know what you're doing, and like actively try and like, I think too many people just expect people to find you, like actively like make use of like the connections filter to try and like find people in your industry or like your target client. Hey, I've, you know, worked with 2 clients from like your competitors, they were struggling with this, you know, I think I could help you too, sort of thing. Job seekers and recruiters, job seekers, it's unless you're kind of going into like the content industry, it can be a little bit harder to kind of use content to attract recruiters. I'd say if you're kind of going down like the job hiring recruitment route, I would definitely focus more on finding posts that they're putting out there and like things you can like comment on that they're posting about, or if their company page posts about anything, comment on that as well. But also the job seeker one, that's where your profile becomes really important, because it's people are looking more less at the content that you're doing. Like if you want to be an engineer, like in that's way possible, like an engineer doesn't have to create content if they don't want to be the CEO. They just want to go in, they'll have no writing, no content jobs, like within there. So people aren't expecting, you know, someone to have all that. Like my boyfriend's a chemist, his LinkedIn is like, I have a new job. That was the last thing he posted like 2 years ago. So like people aren't going to his profile thinking like, you know, Chris is a content creator about chemistry. But if you go on his profile, you can see the other chemistry jobs he's had, a bit about him. He's got a company logo where he works now on like the banner, and he's got like a smart photo. So like if you was to like look for a new job, there's enough information like there about him.
Awesome. The next one is about video content. Is video content also working on LinkedIn? Should we also make video content along with text or image content?
So videos really thrown a spanner in the works on LinkedIn this year. At the start of the year, they turned around and said, we're going to have this curated video feed. Everyone jumped on the bandwagon of creating videos or just turning like every piece of content into like a 3-second video. It has kind of gone back already on the video front. So videos are not going to get high reach or high engagement. But the one thing that videos are good for is like talking directly to your audience and like letting their like the audience kind of like hear from you, from like, you know, there is a person behind this account, like they know what they're talking about on camera. So it's definitely not an approach to go down of posting videos like 7 times a week. But for example, one of my clients wants more podcast opportunities. One of the ways to kind of get more podcast opportunities is for people to see him speaking like on podcasts. So 1 post per week, he knows that it's not going to like pop off or go viral or anything like that, like manages expectations on that. But people see you on a podcast and think, oh, he speaks well, them topics are interesting. They can come on mine. Or if you're doing a video on like, last week I worked with a client, I'm going to share my screen and like do a breakdown of like, you know, how we help them. So they're good from like a credibility perspective, but they're not like a long-term play that I would recommend as like 7. It's not like TikTok or Instagram in that sense.
Yeah, awesome. Appreciate that. And the next one is, if LinkedIn's algorithm is shifting, reach is going down, content is rising, and inbound leads are drying up, how are you both helping your clients stay visible, build trust, and still attract qualified leads through content right now? So basically, if the reach is going down, then how are you leveraging content still?
So it's probably worth mentioning that we're not relying only on inbound leads for the clients. So part of what we do is community building. So we know exactly who our clients like ICP is, so ideal customer profile, and we're like connecting with them on like a weekly basis. So getting them kind of into the network, getting a conversation going. So I think don't just rely on inbound leads off the back of content, because it's probably like the hardest type to get. But instead, you know, connect with people, get those conversations going. People will kind of buy with you off the back of like conversations. If I'm saying visible, like if we kind of notice certain content formats working better than others, or certain topics, like we look at the data every week of like post performance and like what is and isn't working. And we kind of like double down more on that, kind of based on what kind of the goal of the client is. So if we had a post on Tuesday and people DM'd off the back of it, we know, okay, that was a good post for getting people to message us, to get a conversation going in the comments. I'm going to note that down, something more to do. The next point kind of comes into the next question, which is more important, like the engagement on posts. Like, is that more important? Engagement on posts is always like a good thing, because it's like a way for people to kind of see your content. If the more people that engage with your content, the more it's going to get pushed out to other people's feeds. But like the expectation of getting like, you know, 500 likes, 600 likes is not really that realistic. In the way like the algorithms kind of shifted, it's a lot harder now to kind of get that reach. But should I wait for recruiters to approach? I would never wait for a recruiter to approach you. Personally, there's recruiters get so many like applications all the time. They're getting like 50, 60, 70. So if it's like a
Yeah.
recruiter of like a certain firm, like I would just shoot you a shot and reach out to them. Like you've got nothing to lose, like by putting yourself out there. The people who like you might kind of message more off the back of content might be, like I said, if somebody works at that company. So for example, we hire people. I don't do the interview with them, but I will do like a post to let them know like we're hiring people. And I'll kind of have like a bit of back and forth in DMs with them. But I think LinkedIn is so competitive that, and there's that many people that apply for jobs nowadays, you kind of get on the recruiter's radar rather than kind of relying on them getting on yours.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, because I'm gonna pitch in here. If you're only relying on people reaching out to you, I think you're leaving a lot of opportunity on the table. If you know that you have a well-optimized profile and you're creating relevant content, and then do you know that somebody is hiring, whether it's a recruiter or a founder of a startup, whoever it is, I would just shoot my shot, because I think it is incredibly important. Sometimes you might be very well suited to an opportunity, but because you feel like you are not, you don't say anything, you don't reach out, and you basically miss that.
The only thing I will say on this though is, so I had 2 years experience working with Harlib at my previous agency, and I was actually approached. So I wasn't actively looking for a job, but there's a guy called Timothy Armu. He's like a really big creator on the platform that actually reached out to me and said, "Do I want to be his personal brand manager?" And he did that on the basis of seeing I have 2 years experience working at a personal branding agency. My content's come up on his feed because I post every day, and I'm in a network of people, on people's, like I'm connected with a lot of other people that like in the personal branding space who like actively comment on my stuff kind of when it kind of goes live, because we kind of post about similar topics. He noticed me on his feed, asked me if I wanted to go for an interview. Now, funnily enough, one of my other colleagues that me and Harley used to work with, worked for Chris Donnelly, who's one of the biggest creators on LinkedIn. And I reached out to Josh to say, hey, a big creator's like messaged me and wants me to run his personal brand. I've never only done it for just like one person before. What's it like to run it for one person rather than like 7? And then he was like, oh, no way. Like, who is it? What's the situation? So I told him. And then an hour later, Chris Donnelly messaged me and was like, hey, I heard Timo wants to hire you. Timo wants to hire you. I want to hire you.
Okay.
Which again is like best case scenario.
It is. It's a good problem to have. Yeah.
That came off the back of me posting consistently every week on LinkedIn, 4 or 5 days a week. For that to kind of the big opportunity, to land. I was fortunate when me and Harlib got our first jobs. The founder was like in a similar age group to us, was starting out himself, wanting to kind of build a team around him. Like just getting that initial experience, I was able to then leverage to get my next.
Yeah, awesome. Well, we're running out of time, so unfortunately, we are not going to get to all of the questions, but I will take one last one so that Karina can answer it for us. Let me just check. Okay, I think there's one that is, I think, relevant to a lot of people. Can you share your thoughts on what you should be doing if you're creating content as a beginner and no portfolio or professional experience? I think that is a case for a lot of people. So I would love your thoughts on this.
Yeah, so I would just start creating content. So you have to bear, I think everybody worries about this, is like you have to bear in mind the first few bits of content that you're going to put out there in the nicest way possible. Not many people are going to see them. So it's a great opportunity to like just test the waters and experiment with creating different types of content. So if you're kind of, you haven't got a job, you haven't got posts at the moment, but you have a rough idea of like, say you want to go into marketing, you don't have a marketing background. Some like, things you could start posting about are like KFC's done this latest ad campaign. Like, here's my thoughts on it. You can do some learning at home about marketing. You kind of be like, recently been like trying to learn more about SEO. Here are like 5 lessons I've learned from my research about what goes into like good SEO for a website. So the more you start just like learning about like your industry and like, there's so many blogs online about, how to build and create content about like every topic under the sun, that you can literally take a blog that's like, here's 10 ways to be good at X. You can look at it and think, okay, I think these 5 are the best. Create a bit of content from my recent work. Here are 5 things that I've found are what makes good SEO. Ask a question at the end to the audience. What strategy, what approach have you taken? Start a conversation, get it going. You can even just do a bit of background about yourself. So like, hi, I'm so often when I hit like a certain follower milestone, like I'll reintroduce myself. So like, hi, I'm Karina. Here's some stuff you should know about me. Like I have a German degree. I volunteer with guiding, and I get people to learn that about me. But it's also worth noting, like a lot of my audience came because I post about like volunteering with kids and girl guiding. Like I'm not trying to get a job with kids on the platform. I'm literally trying to tell the people in my community and attract people that have similar hobbies and interests to me, because you never know, like if you post about like volunteering with kids, for example, you could connect with someone like in your area, your region, that also like volunteers with the same organization, but they have a job at a company that's really cool. So they start like they start commenting on your stuff as well. So you kind of find in the common ground. But about yourself, what your learnings are, and just experiment. Like you're not going to go viral next week. So like I think people worry too much about like, if you go on my profile and scroll all the way back, like you'll probably laugh at the things that I used to post about, to be honest. But it didn't matter because like 100 people saw it, and it's like at the end of the day, like that it got me to where I am today by just trial and error and like figuring it out and just studying what other people are doing.
Awesome. I think that was a really great way to end it, because at the end of the day, people buy from people, and that could mean landing you a job or getting you a client, whatever it is. It's important to be relatable to the other person. Thank you so much for your time, Karina, today, and really appreciate you answering all of these questions, sharing your journey with us. You're actually our first international guest on a live session, so celebrations. I don't know if it does the emoji things, but yeah, thank you so much. And I hope everybody who has attended the event, thank you so much. And I hope you guys got the value that you wanted. Unfortunately, we couldn't get to all of the questions, but I'll try to answer these in the group. But yeah, thank you so much, guys. Thank you, Karina. And yeah, happy to have you here.
Thank you so much, everybody. And if anybody ever needs anything, just find me on LinkedIn and pop me a message.
Yes, and please do follow and connect with Karina on LinkedIn. She's posting content almost every day, so I'm sure you can learn a lot from there as well.
Thanks, guys. Have a lovely evening. Thanks for having me.
Bye-bye, Karina. Take care. Bye-bye.